Hi folks, GamerBug here again, and today's topic is once again going to be based on the Transformers. And unsurprisingly with me, it's a trip down memory lane, because there's nothing like that nostalgia dopamine hit. So, what rose-tinted retrospective am I taking today? Well, I'm going to be looking back at my childhood specifically, and looking at the Transformer toys that actually influenced it. To this end, I'm going to be highlighting the toys I actually owned as a kid, and I also want to discuss those that I had access to via friends, but that will be another video I think. Along with the look back, I want to look at the now and the future and go over which of these toys I have modern versions of and which I'm waiting to still be announced. Simple enough stuff. But before you get what you want, some inane Transformer and nostalgia bait rambling, if you could give me something back in the shape of your likes, and if you aren't already, your subscription to the channel, that would be massively appreciated. Having just broken 400 subscribers, thanks to you guys, it's on to the slog of hitting 500, which apparently means I can have channel members, whatever that is. I guess I have time to look into that as the journey to 500 subscribers begins. Right, let's go back in time to 1984. Christmas 1984 to be exact, where a 9-year-old me is waiting on Christmas Eve for 6 o'clock to come around. Why Christmas Eve and why 6 o'clock? Well, my dad is British, but my mum was German, and Germans celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. Fun fact, so do the British royal family. Why? Because they're originally German. Crazy, huh? As to why 6 PM, I really have zero idea. I never asked. It certainly put paid to the Santa coming down the chimney myth though. Not sure if I ever believed in him or not. Probably, but I don't recall so. Maybe in 1984 he dropped them off at the door, Amazon style if you were German, though I never recalled a stack of presents dumped on the doorstep or behind a bin. He never announced his presence or rang the doorbell though, so that's very much like most modern deliveries. So back on track, and the memories of Christmas past was a pretty happy one. Decorations, tree lights twinkling, and some Christmas tunes on the stereo. Usual drill, kids sat on the sofa, parents handing gifts out slowly to each of us. Okay, I'm going to digress again, but does anyone else's Christmas these days feel like you now hand out a gift and the kid barely opens it, puts it aside and says next? I used to savour opening the gift, then actually opening the toy, inspecting it, where possible playing with it, and my parents would end up telling me to put it down for a bit and finally give me another gift. Well, unless you got clothes. Screw that, those got dumped aside with a fake smile and then waiting for something different. Wow, if I were a train, I would never be on the rails with how much I go off track. But the scene is set, and though Christmas gifts in the 80s were certainly a mixed bag, as I don't recall dictating everything I wanted to my parents and getting them, I normally got something pretty decent. It was the 80s, most toys were cool because we didn't have all the distractions of today. However, this particular year, I recall receiving my first ever Transformers. Though I couldn't tell you which exact Transformer I got first, I do recall it was one of the mini Autobots. I say one, but actually it would have been two, as I remember how they were wrapped. Two were wrapped together, back to back in their blister packs, and when wrapped like this, they did have a very soft and distinctly clothing package kind of feel. So as you can imagine, I was over the moon not to get new underwear or socks. Actually, I don't think I ever got something like that for Christmas. More likely would have been a jumper, and instead, I got two little robots. At this time, I had no idea what a Transformer was. I'd never seen them in the shop, and to say I studied the toy aisles in my local Tesco would be an understatement. My mum would often go shopping, leaving me in the toy aisles until she'd done, and then would come and grab me as we went to the checkout. Ah, the 80s, where abandoning the kids was the norm. So, having never seen these, my belief today is they probably came from a catalogue. Many families who were not all that financially well off, such as us, catalogues were very common, and they often had stocks the shops wouldn't get. This is another thing here that confused me a few years ago. I know for a fact I got the toys at Christmas 1984. It couldn't be 1983, they didn't exist, but Christmas 1985 would be too late. I also started to collect the GamerbugUK comics in very early 1985, even though they'd been going for months before apparently. I think my first comic wasn't issue 1, as I needed at least one backorder if not more, but my local newsagent was really cool at getting that sorted. Well, they probably just had them in the back not selling, but whatever. So if, as most sources said, the toys came out in 1985 in the UK, how did I get them in 1984? Now, I read a while ago on some forum that some places did get them before 1985, just not everywhere, and this would make sense to my timeframes. Maybe someone out there knows more though, so let me know in the comments. So, With my first two toys opened, which I think was Bumblebee and Brawn, but honestly I have nothing to substantiate the exact who apart from vague memories. I do know, however, I spent a while playing with them dumbfounded how they turned into cars. Over the next few gifts, I would get Windcharger, Gears, Huffer and Cliffjumper, and I was over the moon with these toys. It was already my best Christmas ever. I was happy playing with my toys when my parents did the obligatory "here is your one last gift." And it was a box, and much bigger than the others, but it could have been anything, to be honest. I was not expecting another Transformer. I mean, at this time, I didn't know there were other Transformers. I opened it, and I was flabbergasted, as it was not only a Transformer, but the box was huge compared to the mini-box, and inside was Soundwave. To this day, that toy and the joy it brought me still give me some serious happy memories, and will forever have a happy place in my heart. Obviously, with Soundwave came Buzzsaw, and he was the only tape minion I owned myself. Of course, that also made him by default my favourite of Soundwave's cassettes, and the fact he apparently had a beak that can cut through anything was kinda cool. It's a shame that Laserbeak got all the attention in the cartoon then. To say that was an awesome Christmas was an understatement, but it wasn't quite over yet. You see, a few days later, my uncle's then girlfriend presented me with another gift. Now, I don't really know why she did, though I know she was also a sort of friend of my mum's, but to me she was just some nice person I didn't especially know. But she got me a Christmas present. I opened it, and inside was Optimus Prime. Yep, the leader of the Autobots, trailer and all, was a gift from someone I barely knew. So weird, yet as a 9-year-old boy I was not complaining, and my god he was awesome. The amount of play they all gave me was just amazing, even if I did only really have 2 bad guys to my 7 good guys, but that did not matter to me at all. All I knew is they were brilliant. So putting nostalgia aside, though talking about it does give those happy vibes, which of these have I managed to snag to date, from the modern lines of Siege through Legacy, as well as Studio Series 86. Just like Christmas all those years ago, we're starting with the mini Autobots, and the Netflix line, which was kind of Siege and kind of whatever, gave me Bumblebee, and Earthrise gave me Cliffjumper, both of which I think are solid updates of the G1 originals I had. As much as I enjoy Perspective End, I just don't agree on his Cliffjumper, hey, but each to their own. He's still a good reviewer. As a matter of fact, I think they're better in every way than the originals, with the one exception being I sort of prefer Bumblebee's face mask look, but the more common humanoid face is also very ingrained from the comics and cartoons, so I'm not sad about it. There is part of me as well that would have preferred the buzzworthy Studio Series 86 Cliffjumper, breathe, that's a long title, for those blue windows, but I'm happy with the version I have. I know there is the more recent Studio Series 86 Bumblebee, but I really do not like that one at all, perhaps because of the fat face. So I'll be sticking with my Netflix version here. I never cared for the Penny Racer look all that much anyway, so the alt modes of the new toys are way cooler. The Kingdom line then gave me my chance to get my hands on Huffer, and my feelings on this guy are mixed. You see, I really loved his face mask look from the toy, and there was a charm about the odd smokestack arms and claw hands, of which neither detail is on the new version, but honestly, I really do like the new Huffer figure a lot. Please note I said figure, as in action figure, aka robot mode, because the vehicle mode sucks. I say sucks, but I guess flawed is more the right term, as when you transform him, he has some bizarre tolerance issues and always looks to be slanting or sloping in truck mode. I also find the fists just folding 90 degrees really lazy. Why not have them fold into themselves? Yeah, there would be gaps, but it'd look way better and wouldn't look half-arsed. Of course, that profile view shows you how half-arsed this vehicle mode is, so I assume the designer said, it's already balked, so who cares if the smokestacks look dumb. Studio Series 86 has afforded me one of my favourites in Brawn, and I actually did a comparison review for him in another video where I put him up against his G1 original, so maybe just go watch that. But suffice to say, even with all the differences from the original toy of my youth, I'm very impressed with his robot and vehicle mode. Solid toy. Then the Legacy toy line came through with Gears, and like Brawn, he's a solid all-around toy, but I miss his G1-isms a lot more here than on Brawn, The comic and cartoons would often change the designs, and one of the big areas were more human faces, and some didn't bother me, but Gears did. I guess maybe I'd reached my point of acceptance with them changing Huffer, Bumblebee and Bronzehead, so did we really need to change Gears as well? Don't get me wrong, it is a good toy and it looks fab, and I don't mind the face, I just really would have preferred the face mask look for Gears. His alt mode was never amazing on the old toy, and the new one's passable, if not amazing. Okay, so this was recently leaked, and it's a retro Gears with the G1 face, and you Hasbro, you want me to just throw money away, don't you? Well, fine. On this topic, we also got a leaked retro Bumblebee that is slightly less desirable as the head's still wrong, but it is the Netflix Bumblebee in more accurate colours. And I don't know, it's very possible I'll get this, but if it had the right face and the right gun, I'd be getting my wallet out right now. And finally on this, we had leaked, no pictures yet though, Retro Sea Spray, which I am all for as I do not have him yet, and Retro Brawn. I swear, if he has that Cylon head, then it's official that Hasbro are evil geniuses, and I will still buy him. So, does that mean we get a Retro Huffer with his original head? So we come to Windcharger, and I do not have the latest version as one does not exist. He seems to have been forgotten, with not even a sniff of a leak for him to date. So for now, there is a gap on my shelf for one of my favourites, and he will always be welcome. And just to interject, to anybody who says, but he had a version in Titan's Return or whichever one it was, yeah, that does not scale. I am not going to be buying that. I must wait for one that is the right size. Final note of the mini Autobots is I did have the Bumblebee movie, Brawn, Cliffjumper and Bumblebee in their Cybertronian modes, which I found to be the coolest live action versions to date, and I didn't hate them. But I no longer have them when I realised I'd never be able to complete the collection, and I've since sold them. So with those out of the way, we have Optimus Prime, and I have had and still have a variety of Optimus toys, and this is actually how my rekindling started. Arguably, it started with me seeing the Power of the Prime's Optimus in the shop and thinking how cool it looked, not having looked at Transformers since the 80s, but I didn't bring myself to buy it. Fast forward, and I then saw the Siege version, and he looks simply amazing, and as close to a modern version of Optimus as I could think, based on my childhood memories. And I caved, and I got him, and the snowballs started rolling. Over time, I got the Earthrise Prime, and sold the Siege version, and the Kingdom Core class Prime as well. Scored a deal on the Masterpiece MP10 Prime, and then had a childhood rekindling with the missing Link Prime. Oh god, the nostalgia was overwhelming. Though you can check out my video on that if you want, and you can see my full feelings. However, it's also time to say adios to Earthrise Prime, as I now have a new edition in Studio Series 86 Optimus Prime. And wow, just look at him. He's pretty awesome and ticks pretty much every box I could want. As much as I love the original toy, the cartoon just was better in every way, and this is the cartoon brought to life. To call it a mini masterpiece is pretty fair, and I should know, as I have the Masterpiece version. So to cram all of this into a Commander class figure that is actually cheaper than the missing Link version is impressive. That's not to say there aren't a few issues, as there are, but they're pretty minor. He has some mismatching reds, the paint versus plastic, the smokestacks hate staying in one place, and yes, he has a big backpack. Also, the trailer's very bland on the inside, especially when you compare it to Missing Link's trailer. Though, looking at MP10's trailer, and yes, it has more going on, but it's almost as bland colour-wise. Also, my copy has a very tight clearance when you rotate the head to fill the gap on the cab top. I mean, very tight. It already has stress marks. Not good. And I've heard about a variety of quality issues on him, which I don't have, but I can very well believe do go on. It's a shame. This is a Commander class. You shouldn't be having this level of issues on something that's going to be, well, this popular and cost that much money. Right, so with the Christmas Autobots out of the way, let's talk about my love for Soundwave, and by extension, Buzzsaw. I can say that my number one slot would change daily between Soundwave and Prime, but I think that based on the toy alone, Soundwave typically edged it more often than Optimus. I recall the package art wowing me, but then seeing that chunky Walkman in the package and being just as impressed, and obviously having just spent a little while playing with the minibots, I knew he would transform. Because I reckon I'd have been initially very confused if I got this first, maybe assuming the robot on the front was a mascot for the company making that personal stereo, and as a 9-year-old I had zero interest in a Walkman. I wanted toys, damn it. Anywho, back to Soundwave, and blow me if he wasn't a phenomenal toy. Simple enough for a kid my age to transform, but looking so detailed and cool. I know I'd walk around with him hooked to my trousers like a real Walkman. I typically didn't have a belt as a 9-year-old, and even plugged in some headphones we had lying about the house. But the robot mode was where it was really at. The size was huge, the look was slick, the accessories cool, and he had his pet bird as well. And I may have mentioned this, but the description said he could cut through anything with his beak. So moving to the present day, and yes, I do have Soundwave. Actually, he's my third Soundwave since Siege. Obviously, I did have the Siege version, who was cool enough except for the battle damage and the fact he turned into a space brick. I then got my hands on the Netflix version, which I was happy with, even though again he had some issues. Mainly, he had kibble from the space brick that should have been removed, and the Walkman mode was a bit lacking, but generally fine. He also came with Ravage, but more about him later, and Laserbeak, who was perfectly fine, but wasn't buzzsaw. Skip forward a few years, and I saw the Dramatic Capture Nemesis bridge set. Yep, a considerable mouthful, and I was tempted, but decided to not bother and wait to see what the leaked Legacy Leader Soundwave was going to be. It was then made pretty apparent that the new leader class was going to be the same Netflix figure. At this point, it also hadn't been confirmed what, if any, tapes he was coming with, and I decided I'd pass on the Dramatic Capture bridge set and just get this guy. However, I then noticed my Netflix Soundwave and my Earthrise Megatron had some god-awful yellowing plastic going on, which surprised me as I hadn't really noticed them in my display cabinet. But once I knew, and my brain would not let that go. With needing to replace 2 out of the 3 from the Nemesis bridge set, I decided, well, if I can get my hands on it, I may as well replace Shockwave as well. And if I'm honest, I was very happy with this bridge set. The updated versions, I mean, they were just new paint jobs really, but they were good. I like them, they look great. I also managed to sell the ones with the yellowing and my leader class Shockwave, and the set itself actually only ended up costing me a few quid. So, I now have the Soundwave from the Dramatic Capture set, and well, it's Netflix Soundwave with a better paint job, and that's it. Oh, and he only comes with Laserbeak, but I actually kept my Ravage from the Netflix package, so that's a plus. I do like this figure, though I'm not sure I shouldn't have just waited for the Legacy Soundwave and got buzzsaw as well, though I'd have possibly struggled to sell the Netflix version then with its yellowing and the Earthrise Meg, so I'll just live with the decision. Maybe we'll get a Studio Series 86 version at some point, but my fears are it'd just be a repaint of this again, which would be such a shame. Really, I do want to reiterate, he is not a bad figure. He's actually good, looks like Soundwave, feels like him, turns into a passable alt mode. He just could be better, and my bias means he deserves better. After all, see how good Studio Series 86 Prime turned out. I'd happily pay for a Commander update for Soundwave with all the tapes with the same level of love that went into Prime. So that's Christmas 1984 out the way, and my own collection didn't really get a lot bigger over the next few years, but it did increase, so let's go over those in what I think is the chronological order of me getting my hands on them, but I might be slightly off. As odd as it may sound in today's fast-paced world, the next Transformer that would be mine to own, rather than friends' toys, was a birthday gift in the late summer of 1985, and that was Inferno. I immediately fell in love with this toy, which was interesting as it was not a very featured character in the cartoon or the comic, which did kind of annoy me, but regardless of all that, I loved him. First off, he was a fire engine, so that's a big tick for a 10-year-old kid. Then, the robot just looked cool, and everything about him screamed heroic to me. Add to that the spring-loaded fist rocket gimmick he had, and there was a lot of play value in this guy, even if the spring gimmick broke after a while and I needed to keep the fists in with blue tack. So when I heard there was a new toy of him coming in the Kingdom line, I was over the moon, though with mild reservations due to the peg issue Grapple had, and honestly, he has not disappointed me. The robot mode is awesome and so faithful, but way better than the original. Again, he captures that heroic look just right, comes with all the cool accessories, and though there is no sprinky shooting action, I don't need blue tack either. The vehicle is cool, but I wouldn't have minded a slightly more modern take on the fire engine. There are some slightly mismatching paint apps as well, but nowhere near as bad as Grapple, and also the peg issue was fixed thankfully. Transformation is fun as well, and pretty simple. All in all, a great addition to my collection. Christmas 1985 saw 2 new additions to my collection, annoyingly both Autobots, but they were good ones in Hound and Hoist. So at this point, Hound was a firm favourite from the cartoons and comics, so getting him was a massive win for 10-year-old me. Hoist was a less notable character again, so let's talk about Hound first. Whether it's comic or cartoon Hound, he was a cool, easygoing guy with a cool hologram gun and he turned into a Jeep, all ticks for a 10-year-old kid. I also liked he had a pretty simple transformation, even though it obviously meant very little articulation. In my modern collection, I had Siege Hound for the longest time, and I wasn't sad as he was a bloody fabulous figure. He looked like Hound, he was way more articulated, he had some badass accessories, and the alt mode was, for a cyber training vehicle, surprisingly tame and could easily work as an earth mode. Solid 8 out of 10. The problems were I didn't like the fists hanging off the bottom in vehicle mode, the annoying siege battle damage look, and the alt mode wasn't quite right, and I knew that. Minor niggles, nothing deal breaking. Apart from rumours and some concept art, nothing emerged about an Earth mode Hound for a very long time, until finally he was announced and he was going to be part of the Autobot 5-pack in the Legacy line. Now, I already had all 4 of the other Autobots, but I also knew I could not pass up on an actual Jeep styled Hound, and Hasbro probably knew this as well, because that is the Hound I have now, and he's a solid figure, just like his Siege predecessor. Matter of fact, he's heavily based on the Siege mold, with some retooling to make him look more earthy, but that's not a bad thing. I would say he somehow feels less imposing than the Siege version for some reason. He doesn't suffer from the battle damage, the transformation removes a fiddly step, but the accessories feel cheaper, and those fists still hang off the bottom. It's a side grade rather than an upgrade, but a proud part of my collection and a worthy update to the original. Hoist was an odd one, as I don't recall if he'd been in the comics or cartoon by the time I got him, but regardless, I wasn't sad to get another Transformer, though honestly I'd have preferred the Decepticon. I do see why it wasn't a Decepticon, as this was probably a price point sweet spot for my parents, and I imagined all the Decepticons were more expensive or less expensive. Regardless, I wasn't mad. Overall, Hoist was a good figure, even a little odd looking, but the cover art was friggin' awesome. He was a tow truck, so that added in some nice play value for me, and he had those spring-loaded arms that this time never did break on me, but I did lose the accessories over time. He was just a solid toy and one I enjoyed playing with, but he wasn't as cool as the others, and he was not very articulated either, but I do have fond memories. So in the present day, we had Hoist released as part of the Earthrise lineup, and I had to get him simply because of nostalgia. But also, at this point I was formulating what my collection would need, and he was part of that criteria. As a nostalgia hit, he's pretty good, but the mould has a few issues that I'm not a fan of. The first of which is actually faithful to the original, and that's the fact the arms are stuck to the inside of the side panels of the vehicle mode. This feels clunky and odd and means the arm articulation always involves that huge panel in some way. I kinda wish they'd found a way to fold these up out of the way. It would have improved things a lot. Also, how the arms slot in feels weird, like they aren't actually slotted in, but yeah, it's how they go. Not super annoying, just looks strange. The last of the robot mode issues for me is the accessory being a huge, unpainted, orange hose looking thing. I'm not a fan of how it slots into his hand, but I'm less of a fan of how it just looks tacky. He never had a big orange hose in G1, FNAF, so why does he now? And he has that siege battle damage thing on his hood, which I don't like. The final issue is the hands are very visible, almost dragging along the ground in vehicle mode. It wasn't good in Hound, and it's even worse here. It's just very lazy. I guess I may as well mention the unmatching wheels as well. Ugh. All in all, not a bad toy, but not the best. I'd call it a decent update, but lacks a lot of the charm, especially in vehicle mode. The next character is going to be an easy one to cover, as it's Trailbreaker. So basically everything we said about Hoist is true here. Now it's worth noting, I cannot recall where I got this guy from, but I think it was either a random gift given to me from maybe a friend of mine or a friend of the family. I wasn't impressed enough with Hoist to choose this guy, and even my clueless parents wouldn't have picked me a car as samey as this, so it's kind of a mystery. But have him I did. He was, like Hoist, a good enough toy, but not one I loved. He was different enough, not having the towing trailer but instead the camper cover for the trailer, so different enough in vehicle mode, but the robots were kinda close. I did tend to keep Trailbreaker with his fists as per the cover rather than the one-handed look like in the cartoon, so that made him and Hoist different as well. Unsurprisingly, the modern version is fine, and though I now have the 5-pack version instead of the Earthrise one I started out with, he's a bit better and a bit worse. I think I preferred the black look of Earthrise rather than the cartoon grey of the 5-pack, but something about this version seems cleaner. I do prefer his hand rocket thing as it looks more detailed and just blends in, unlike Hoist, but I'm not a big fan of his face, preferring the face mask visor look of the G1 toy, so here I definitely prefer Hoist. Alt mode wise he's fine, but has the same issues as Hoist, so fine is the best I can give him. And we come to the last Transformer I personally owned as a kid. A birthday gift in 1986, and it was not one I liked that much at first, but it did grow on me, and that was Wreck-Gar. So let's start with what I didn't like. First, he was a character I did not know, as I hadn't seen the movie yet. Then was my big annoyance, which anyone who's watched my other videos will know is coming: the scale. He turned into a motorbike bigger than Optimus Prime. I hated this. Don't get me wrong, the bike mode was cool, but it was massive, and 11-year-old me couldn't deal with this, even with my odd imagination. All that aside, I liked the robot mode. He was pretty articulated, but he was a far cry from the toys I'd have preferred. Again, my parents saw a Transformer, thought looks good, that'll do, fair enough, but he was meh overall, though as I said, over time he grew on me a bit, and he did become part of the crew. But then two things happened between that time and Christmas of that year. The first thing that happened was the film came out, and this was not the wondrous thing I was hoping for, as it killed off all my favourite characters and introduced the very lacklustre characters to replace them. Those I did like got royally screwed, looking at you Ultra Magnus, and all the new characters just turned into future things. Also, as part of this, I saw Wreck-Gar in the movie, and oh god, he was the first iteration of the stupid TV babblespeak I hate with Bumblebee these days. This really killed my interest in Wreck-Gar a lot. But then, the other point was, I got older, and I just kinda lost interest. I went to senior school and computer games took over my life, and plastic toys became something to just entertain me here and there, but eventually faded to nothing. A shame, but it is what it is. Let's look at modern Wreck-Gar from the Studio Series 86 line, and the robot mode is absolutely awesome. Articulate, big, menacing, cool accessories, and bloody cool transformation. He captures none of the silliness of the 86 character and feels like some kind of cool Ronin robot. He is a very solid toy. The bike mode is cool as heck as well. It's so clean and brings back some seriously good nostalgia vibes. Now, I will say yes, the scale still sucks, but he can actually have other characters ride him now, which makes more sense. I found you can really do great poses with Studio Series 86 Hot Rod riding on him, and he looks good. Really, really good. I really rate this version of Wreck-Gar, being one of the top figures in the Studio Series 86 line. So that's it for now, a walk down memory lane of GamerBug's childhood years with Transformer toys. What about you? Did you have a massive collection, or just random characters here and there? What kind of nostalgia hit do you get thinking back about them? Let me know in the comments. I shall be doing a part 2 where I go over all the toys I experienced as a kid that belonged to friends, and there are a lot more than the select few I owned, but I feel it deserves its own video as it's a different vibe overall. As always, if you liked the video, then please do leave a like, and if you haven't yet, then maybe consider subscribing. With all that done, the only thing left to say is thank you for watching, and until next time, GamerBug out.